Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how you can easily hook up DeepWiki's MCP server to a Letta agent. If you're not familiar with DeepWiki, DeepWiki is a way that you can convert any GitHub repo into a series of comprehensive documentation. DeepWiki is maintained by Cognition, which is the people that make the AI coding agent Devon. And the way that it works is you can provide any repo name, such as in this case, letta-ai/letta. That's the GitHub slug. DeepWiki is actually a really good way to understand a code base very quickly. If you're working with coding agents like Claude Code or Cursor, you may sometimes run into the case where you need your model to understand how a library works. And if you're a human, you can go to DeepWiki and just kind of click around and get a good sense, right? Read it like standard documentation. But this isn't super machine readable. You can pass all of these URLs to coding agents. Cursor and Claude Code should all be able to read web pages fairly easily. DeepWiki provides a publicly accessible MCP server to agents. And what this looks like is that your agent now has access to tools that can help it navigate the DeepWiki page. So let me give you like kind of a general conceptual overview of how this works inside of Letta. We have DeepWiki here, which is AI summarized code documentation, right? So this is the thing that we just looked at. You know, you can just kind of go click around, you can give it a repo, and it will construct all of this documentation on your behalf. Then we have their MCP server. This is run by DeepWiki. This will give your AI agent special tools. And the MCP server exposes a predetermined list of tools that the agents know are accessible at this server. So for DeepWiki, we have read wiki contents, read wiki structure, and ask questions. The structure gives you a general overview of the shape of the documentation. Read wiki contents gives you the full text. This can be quite large for large repos, so you may wish to navigate to particular pages. And then you have ask question. And the nice thing about ask question is if you go back, you can say, how does Letta work? This is a little text box that's always available at the bottom of DeepWiki. You can just hit enter, give it a question. It'll start doing search across the documentation page, and it'll start giving you answers. So it's an open source framework for building stateful AI agents with long-term memory and tool integration capabilities, which is what I'm going to show you soon. The nice part about DeepWiki is that whatever, I don't know. You can assume that, just pretend I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong every single time. So I don't know, don't at me. Or if you do, please also like the video. But the nice part of working with DeepWiki is that their MCP server actually exposes this can you talk to the repo functionality. And what that means is you can have your agent ask their specialized agent to understand the wiki and answer a particular question. So let's look at this kind of flowchart I have here a little more. These are the tools that are available. Anytime an agent is connected to an MCP server, the MCP server will tell the agent, hey, you have access to these three tools: read wiki contents, read wiki structure, and ask questions. That tells the agent what arguments it should provide to those tools to send to the MCP server. So the way this works in practice is you sit down with your agent and you ask it a question, just like you would if you use Claude or ChatGPT, right? You just kind of type something into a chat box, and I'll show you what this looks like in Letta in just a second. So this query will go to your Letta agent. Then it may say something like, let me look that up for you. I'll use the read wiki context tool. So the agent is going to call that tool by providing the arguments to a function. In this case, it's the repo name, letta-ai/letta. That's our GitHub slug in case you want to take a look at it. At this point, the tool call is routed to the MCP server that DeepWiki runs. Next, we're going to pass this big text file full of documentation from the DeepWiki page. That's this stuff here. And we're going to pass it back to the MCP server. The MCP server is then going to forward it back to the agent, same big text file with documentation. So then we're going to go from the DeepWiki MCP server back to the agent that called it, and you're going to get some document like this. This document provides a comprehensive introduction to the Letta repository, and this is the stuff that's on the main page for the DeepWiki. You're just preparing it in an easy way for the language model to understand. This will go into our Letta agent. Now, our Letta agent has access to this entire piece of documentation. It's in its context window. So you can give it a final answer, which just says, our agent would read that documentation and would say, it's an open source framework for building stateful agents, AI agents that maintain persistent memory and context across conversations. Letta operates as an AI operating system that runs agents as services, not as a library, which is actually a very interesting differentiating factor between us and other agent frameworks. It's built to be a backend service for large-scale deployments. At this point, we're done. Our agent has called a tool to get information from DeepWiki. That agent then used the information in the wiki to answer a user question. This was a simple walkthrough through a standard MCP tool call. The agent is connected to an MCP server. The MCP server tells the agent what tools are available. The agent can call those tools and use them as they would any other tool. MCP servers are really, really powerful. I think we're still at early days in seeing how many platforms actually serve useful MCP servers. It's getting really good now. So I was really skeptical about MCP when it first came out, and seeing all of the interesting things that people have been building on MCP have completely changed my mind. So give MCP a shot, and if you want to give MCP a shot in a Letta agent, I'll show you how to do that right now. So here is Letta's agent development environment, or ADE. I've created a custom project here to show you how easy it is to create a new agent, hook it up to an MCP server, and get started with talking to a DeepWiki repo. To create a new agent, I'm going to go over to the Agents tab on the left. Then we'll see a list of agents here. It's empty because I just started this project. When you're creating an agent, you can search across some example templates we have. I'm just going to pick Start from Scratch. Now that we've created our agent, we can take a look at what's going on in our ADE. Over here is settings and tool management. Over here is core memory, which we don't currently have yet. And in the middle here, we have our agent simulator, which you should recognize as a standard chatbot. Like, hey, how's it going? Hey there, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you? And of course, you can see the reasoning each time an agent does any action. This is really useful for debugging or seeing how your agent is performing in real-world situations. If you'd like to, you can select a different model in here. We provide some number of free 4.0 mini calls. Anything that's marked standard, you can get a certain number of free calls if you use Letta Cloud. There is a $20 a month subscription plan that'll give you access to a bunch more calls to various models if you want it. But for right now, I'm just going to stick with GPT 4.0 mini because it's cheap and quick. Okay, so how do we actually add an MCP server to our organization? In order to do this, we can take a look here at our tool manager. If you click tool manager, you'll see a list of things here on the left that you could click on: tools, rules, variables, dependencies. We'll cover this stuff in other videos. The thing I want to point you to is connected servers. So let's click on the DeepWiki MCP server to see how we can set it up. We can click on it. It says open access, free service, doesn't require any API keys or authentication. Great. You can hit test connection if you want to, and this will show you a list of the available tools. So read wiki structure, for example, is a function that accepts a repo name, such as Facebook/React. Once you're happy with that, you can hit confirm. Boom, we have our MCP server hooked up. But we've only attached the MCP server. We haven't attached the actual tools to the agent. MCP servers are set up at the organization level, so each individual agent needs to be allowed permissions to access that MCP tool. So if you go back to the tool manager and you hit connected servers, you'll have access to a variety of tools here that you can attach. So here I'm going to attach all three of these: read wiki structure, read wiki contents, and ask question. All right, so we're back here at the agent simulator. I've cleared our message chat so we can kind of start from scratch. If you go look here on the bottom, you'll be able to see that we have read wiki contents, ask question, and read wiki structure. These are tools that we've just attached to the agent. So the agent knows that they're there. You may have to do some prompting to help it understand how to use them, but our agent here is working pretty well by default by just seeing the listed tools. So I'm actually going to ask my agent to go take a look at the Letta repo, which you should star if you haven't already. But here's my question. Hey, can you look at the wiki structure for Letta AI/Letta? And it'll start to respond. This takes a long time because it's a language model stuff. So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. Okay, so we can see here our agent has prepared an overview of the wiki structure that's on DeepWiki. If you want to understand a little bit more about how this tool was used, you can click to expand it. You'll see here the arguments that the agent provided. It said, give me the repo name Letta AI/Letta. That's function call arguments. And then the output of this tool that came back from the MCP server is just a general overview with some pages. So our agent more or less regurgitated this. This is a very, very simple application. So let's actually have it look at the contents of the wiki to see if it can answer a more detailed question. So let's ask a slightly more complicated question. I'm going to say, read the wiki contents for Letta and tell me how it works. Once you're done, use the Ask Question tool to request an analysis of how Letta supports MCP servers. Remember that the Ask Question tool sends a query to Devin on DeepWiki. So it's the equivalent of having your language model type something inside of this box. Then Devin is going to go answer that query by reading all of the documentation inside of the repo and sending it back to whoever called it. In this case, it's our Letta agent. So I'm going to go ahead and hit send here and see what it does. There you can see the reasoning. It wants to understand how the Letta project works. I like actually having the reasoning here because it's super useful. I can understand why it's doing things and help to debug when it does tool calls incorrectly or when it's behaving improperly. Then we can see that it's asking a question to Devin. So I've skipped ahead in here a little bit so that we have the language model results here. So our model provided this repo name argument that will be put inside of a tool that is sent to the MCP server that DeepWiki runs. Then it'll provide this big text file containing some information about the repo. All of this is intended to be language model readable. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll actually see this part where it says function output was truncated since it exceeded the character limit. You may run into this when you're working with large text files, especially for MCP calls. So in case you need to change the default character limit from 6,000 to some higher number, you can go inside of Read Wiki Contents, for example, hit the Edit tool, go to Settings, and then change the character limit. I won't do this for now, because we have a satisfactory answer, but in case you run into this, that's how you fix it. Then we can take a look at our Ask Question tool call. In this case, we provided the repo name, Letta, and then the question that we wanted Devin to answer. Then Devin thinks a little bit, it'll go look at all the docs, and it will return this whole answer about how MCP works. Then our language model can see all of those responses, so the stuff that was in the wiki contents, and it also has access to what Devin told us from DeepWiki. Here we can see that how configuration works for Letta, management, tool execution, the API endpoints for working with MCP, etc. So this is a good example of how you can work with MCP servers in Letta. There's plenty of other default MCP servers there as well. I personally really like working with the Zapier server. Zapier is extremely flexible. It has most of the tools that you would want and an extremely extensible way of working with general workflows. We'll talk more about how to integrate Letta with Zapier in later videos. You can also connect directly to GitHub's MCP repo if you want to do that, as well as a few others, Stripe, Pipedream, Apify, etc. We're adding custom MCP servers all the time. So if there's anything you don't see in here as a default option, but you really want or need, please let us know. You can go join our Discord. You can comment on the video. You can tweet at me. You can send Blue Sky messages. You can send carrier pigeons. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you learned a little bit about MCP and Letta. You can like and subscribe if you want. I would like that very much. So you can go check out our Discord. You can tweet at me. You can send carrier pigeons, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a lovely day and happy hacking.